terminals, train stations, and even roadside checkpoints of commercial vehicles. So now we're actually at the point in America where you could be, you know, it's the time where you're going to take your family to a bus station. You're going to want to get on a bus, and they're going to want to grope you and your kids before you get on a bus. I mean, what are you prepared to do? How do you tell them, no, there's no way I'm going to get on that bus and allow you to do this?
Well, again, we only have the rights we're willing to fight for, and fight not being a literal use in this case, but to stand up and have recognized. You say it's a VIPER program. I would say that actually stands for Very Invasive Procedures Exercised Relentlessly, because as long as we let them, they're going to continue to expand this method of operation.
Absolutely.
But there's absolutely no lawful authority for it. The federal government cannot create a power they never possessed, and they certainly can't create one we did not give them.
Can you sue a TSA agent individually? You touch my kids, I'm going to sue you.
You can. The problem you have is how the Congress has set up the ability to do that, such as in Jesse Ventura's case. Alex originally asked me about that the first time I was on the show, and I hadn't got to research it as thoroughly as I should have before I responded to him. But the point is that when they filed suit in Jesse Ventura's case, his lawyer actually filed it in the wrong court. Congress has set up a very specific jurisdiction for these suits to be filed in. It has to be filed in one particular court. And unless it is, which as in Ventura's case occurred, the court can only say we have to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction, which they also did in Ventura's case. And it's simply because it was never filed in the proper court. But these courts are specifically designed pretty much like tax court is for the IRS. It's no longer a question of what rights you have before you got here. It's a question of what rights did you give up and how can we penalize you for it. So by the time most people get to the point of taking and filing this suit, they will have already unintentionally waived so many of the rights they didn't know to protect. And again, that's a problem I have with our public servants saying that an unalienable right can be knowingly or unknowingly waived. Because waived by definition is surrender. And we're given in the definition of unalienable that these rights cannot be sold or traded away. They can't be surrendered. So the courts have attempted to create this false waiver saying that we can if we don't exercise and demand that they be enforced at a particular place and time. So how we do it is in numbers. An individual in these particular instances stands no chance of enforcing his rights. But a bus terminal full of people, why don't the transportation companies themselves say, look, we're not going to partake of this? The airlines could solve this whole problem by refusing to fly if the TSA is anywhere in the airport.
Or some of them are hiring private security.
Exactly. And the thing is that the federal government has no real lawful authority to force these programs down the throats of the states or the people of the states. It is only by our, for lack of a better word, our apathy, which is mostly being apathetic individuals, that's pathetic individuals for short. We won't stand up for ourselves. We've gone so long expecting someone to do it for us that we no longer have the will, desire, or knowledge to do it for ourselves.
And we knew this was going to happen. As soon as they announced the TSA, we knew it was transportation. You know, it stands for it doesn't stand for just for airports, so we knew it was going to expand. You know, I've even heard of high school prom, that they hired the TSA to check students before they entered a prom. Sure. So who knows just how far this is going to go? Well, it'll keep going. It'll just keep going and going unless we stand up to all this.
That's true. That's extremely true. No one is more willing to protect the rights of an individual than the individual to whom they belong. And as long as they can keep us thinking that they're the ones that holds the power instead of us, people will continue to lose their rights. They will continue to think there's no point in trying to keep them and enforce them. It's only by numbers that we're going to make a difference. And hopefully shows like this one will get the word out and get people asking questions. Even if it doesn't give them all the information they need today, it will get them asking questions to seek the information they need so that they may have a better tomorrow.
Okay. I want to switch gears just for a second. I want to talk about, I have a journalist question for you, because sometimes I'll go out as a reporter and I'm denied to ask. I can't ask questions because I don't have a press pass, or I'll have a press pass, but they say I don't have the proper credentials. I'm not with CBS, NBC, or any of the mainstream media, so sometimes they will deny us our ability to ask questions. What do you say to that?
Well, again, I say that's a violation of our exercise of free speech and the ability to, get answers to questions that we need from our government, to air our grievances with them, to be in the know about what they do. What they're doing is they're selectively allowing the media that they know will not cast them in a bad light or feed misinformation.
Exactly, because I did have a press pass, but it was from InfoWars. We were at, it was called Decker Lake, and they were unveiling these new armed patrol boats. And we'd actually were there months earlier, and we got to talk to the law enforcement officials, got some great interviews. I think what happened is they end up seeing the YouTube videos, found out we were with InfoWars, and then they said we did not have the proper credentials. And my thing is, if I was a high school kid, doing a story for the high school newspaper, I should be allowed to go there and ask questions.
Well, technically speaking, any member of the public should be able to do that,
Exactly.
Press pass or not. The courts have ruled in relation to these officers charging people with unlawfully wiretapping and recording them, even in a public place, using their cell phones or some type of camera, that every member of the general public has now more or less become a freelance member of the media. It would be no different than the actual mainstream media hiring a contract photographer to go out and take pictures for them. He's not really a member of their cabal, but he's being paid to operate on their behalf. For them to limit the access of non-mainstream media is to basically limit who gets to report what on who. And again, that's a complete deprivation of our free speech rights and our right to know what our government is up to.
Yeah, they'll even pretend like they'll have a list. And they'll say, well, we don't see you on the list, but you're on public property. So, I mean,
Right.
It's ridiculous.
But again, there's also no law preventing you from making yourself an NBC or a CBS or a Fox News or a badge of that nature and just using it anyway.
So you can impersonate a Fox News man if you want
Exactly. There's no law against that because those are not official licenses to be members of the press. There are no official laws regulating that particular activity. And the fact that they're attempting to segregate the media based upon who will report favorably and who won't is exactly the problem of censorship that we don't want them to have access to. So
I think the time is coming where they're going to try to make it where you have to be a licensed reporter or a licensed investigator.
Right, which would again violate court rulings on the subject. But the way the courts are going, that probably won't remain for long.
Well, even if it's not against the law, they'll just say that it is.
Well, sure, they will. But then again, if you know what your rights are and what your power to do what you're doing is, and where they're actually attempting to misapply and misuse the law yet once again, then when they get through, you simply countersue for malicious prosecution. And even the prosecutor and the judge have no immunity under a malicious prosecution suit because they were acting without jurisdiction and coming after you in the first place. And that is the actual Achilles heel of these judges and these prosecutors that are creating these bogus precedents and these bogus case law decisions that appear to violate everything that we hold dear as a right. And that is that the person they're doing it to does not realize, or he unknowingly relies upon the advice of an attorney whose real job is to make the deal and ensure that your rights are protected during the deal only to the degree that he doesn't have to defend them. And they rely on that advice and don't know that they have a case to sue, that they have a way to make that decision go away and hold that judge and prosecutor accountable.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, how do we can we indict the prosecutors, the judges, the prosecuting attorneys?
Well, the indictment would have to be handled by the grand jury, in which case you would have to have an actual criminal accusation against these individuals to present to the grand jury. Now, in Texas, the law is very clear. Any reasonable, credible individual may present information to the grand jury, and present's not actually the correct word, but to give them information regarding any crime that they are aware of. So we can actually give information to the grand jury. We can actually make verified criminal statements and send those to the grand jury, or ask to be allowed in